The Acolyte is over, at least for now. I've obviously been talking about the series week to week, one episode at a time, but I want to step back and look at the bigger picture now. How did the whole season work together? What did I like? What do I think could be improved upon? All that stuff. When I do episodic breakdowns, whether I like or dislike an episode, my goal is to go scene by scene and try to talk about the themes and the characters and how it all relates back to the larger themes of Star Wars. My opinion is in there, but it's not the focus of the video. I like to save most of my takes for this kind of video, being able to see the whole season in its entirety. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. I liked watching it. Some episodes and moments were fantastic. Night was of course a standout episode. The finale was also great. The primary story and characters had me invested, and my heart was pounding during the last episode. The first couple episodes were shakier for me. We had to establish new characters and scenarios, and the mystery didn't really start clicking for me until episode 2, when Torben took the poison. I was into the action sequences, and I love seeing Jedi using martial arts. I could feel myself getting more into the series after each episode. But I also have to point out that what really helped me get into the story was watching every episode a second time, going through them scene by scene, and writing about them. That's when I was able to catch setups and payoffs and profound character beats that I just didn't notice on my first watch. On one hand, I'm glad a repeat viewing made me appreciate every episode more, but on the other, I do think some of those character beats or setups could have been stated more clearly. I love that Leslie Headland did so many interviews and answered so many questions over the course of the season, and some of those questions were deliberately left open to audience interpretation, but there were also a lot of questions that seemingly had direct answers. I don't want the series to spoon-feed us its themes or messaging, but there are still moments where I'm like, I'm not sure what that was about. Like Basil, adorable little dude, but some of his scenes in episodes 6 and 8 left me wondering what he was doing, and I know I'm not alone in that. So I think the writing could have been more deliberate and clear in some places. I also think the writing would have benefited from more or longer episode, and that's not just an Acolyte criticism, that's a problem on Disney Plus and streaming in general. So many of these series feel like they're stuck in between TV show and movie. I had a great time reevaluating The Acolyte and its mysteries every week as we learn new information, but the breaks in episodes, especially in the first half, seemed so abrupt, it kind of gave off that vibe of a movie cut into parts. This has been a trend since Game of Thrones, I think, or probably earlier, but I remember being surprised when it only had 10 episodes, but they were all an hour long. Then those seasons got shorter, and then The Mandalorian came along, and it was a short season full of short episodes. I'm just a little tired of that streaming format that feels like it's in limbo between television and film. Andor felt like it had a pretty good balance. Some episodes were short, some were long, but there were 12, and it seemed like there was enough screen time to let everything breathe. I think The Acolyte was a very ambitious show, but not all of its ideas or characters got the time I think they needed. I was shocked by Jecki and Yord's deaths, but I wasn't devastated because I just don't think I got enough time with either of them. While I understand May's turn away from Chimera and her master, I think it happened really fast. Another episode with her grappling about what it means to her that Osha is alive would have helped there. Or, and this is my big personal one, I would have loved to see more of Senator Rayancourt. A lot of the early episodes had Vernestra telling us about the Jedi Order's political enemies, but the second we were shown even a hint of that in episode 6, I was like, that's what I'm talking about. And David Harewood was great in the role in episode 8. He would have made a fantastic antagonist throughout the rest of the story. Giving him an appearance in the first 2 episodes, one in the middle, and then one at the end would have given a face to those political stakes. As for the pacing, I'm kind of on the fence here, because I understand the structure of having those flashback episodes mixed in. They allowed us to reevaluate the previous episodes, which I enjoyed doing, but when we hit episode 7 especially, it felt like we slowed down some of the momentum earned by episodes 4, 5, and 6. Again, if we simply had more episodes, that wouldn't have been as much of an issue. If we had 3 or even 2 more episodes after the second flashback, I think we could have built up larger anticipation for the finale. But then watching the finale, it all worked well for me. So in the end, it wasn't that big of a deal. Again, I'm on the fence as far as pacing is concerned. Even though I think there were some issues in the writing, I thought the overall story was great. It kinda reminds me of the prequels in that way. I think the story of Anakin's fall is compelling and tragic, but the execution has some issues. The Acolyte feels similar. Jedi covering up a big mistake and their lies rippling out to affect 2 mystical twins leading to huge political consequences, Yeah, I like all of that. I just think there could have been more clarity in some of the writing, and I wish there were more episodes, which probably would have helped with the clarity. But to talk about stuff I liked, I'm grateful that this series took a big swing. I absolutely think it's important for Star Wars to continue expanding. We cannot keep going back to the well of the Skywalker saga, and especially the original trilogy era. We've had so many stories set during the reign of the Empire. Books and comics have been doing new things in Star Wars for a long time, but I'm glad to see that live-action Star Wars is willing to take risks too. The Acolyte found a strong balance between the personal, relatable story and the larger galactic one. Even if we don't get a second season, I can easily see how Soul's mistakes will ripple out into major consequences for the Jedi Order. I liked all the major characters. Yord was a standout for me, and like I said, I wish we got more time with him. Osha was an interesting one. I liked May's intensity and vulnerability from the start, but something about Osha I wasn't connecting with at first. She had a lot of little jokes that didn't land for me, but now I think it's because they weren't coming from a genuine place. She had all this sadness and grief and pain bottled up, and she was trying to put on a front of being fine and cool and chill, but that feral version of her was just waiting to escape. So I liked her more and more the darker she got. Speaking of the dark, the Stranger was probably my favorite character in the show. Of course, his big reveal in Night was so much fun, and I love how unique he felt as a Sith. Still terrifying, but also willing to crack some jokes. His use of cortosis was fantastic. That was such a fun, nerdy inclusion. Manny Jacinto crushed all aspects of the character, whether he was the bumbling chimere, or the cold-hearted murderer, or the seductive potential teacher. I talked about the lightsaber fights already, but the action sequences all worked great for me. The choreography was so much fun, but I thought the use of martial arts was truly inspired. The Jedi of this era shouldn't have to break out their lightsabers all the time. They would mostly be going up against regular people, so using hand-to-hand combat was a great way to bring in a new kind of action to Star Wars while also making sense because they don't want to escalate the violence. I feel like the story moved along quickly, which I appreciated. I was afraid May and Dosha being twins would be dragged out for multiple episodes, but it wasn't at all. I was afraid the Jedi would still be skeptical of Osha, but they weren't. I was afraid Chimere's big reveal as the Stranger would be treated like some major plot twist, but it wasn't. Plot beats were telegraphed, but were still fun to watch play out. While I don't think The Acolyte was perfect, I looked forward to it every week. The finale felt satisfying enough to me that I don't need a second season to understand everything, but I want one, especially after the Darth Plagueis and Yoda teases. I would welcome a renewal and a continuation of this story. Honestly, what I really want is more stuff with Rayancourt or senators like him. I loved the show's exploration into what Mother Anastasia said. This is about power and who is allowed to wield it. The Jedi saw some witches and immediately labeled them as scary villains because they didn't understand their view of the Force, and they were afraid of the power they cultivated. Meanwhile, we have Rayancourt, a powerful man in his own right, but he is afraid of the Jedi because they have a power he doesn't understand. This cycle of fear of the unknown of other belief systems and cultures and ways of life, and how that fear can spiral into disaster, that was intriguing to me the whole way through the series. And although I'm sure it'll continue to be tragic, I would not mind seeing more of that. But those are my thoughts on Season 1 of The Acolyte. I'm hopeful we'll hear about a renewal sooner rather than later. I think it took 3 or so months between the end of Ahsoka's first season and the official announcement of its renewal, so we might be in for a long wait. But with my luck, just me saying it'll take a while could manifest the news right away, so who knows. Let me know what you thought of The Acolyte in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.